Hey, what's up, everybody? So, welcome to episode 1 of the Heavenly Vision podcast. I'm your host. My name is Ace, and I'm just excited to be here today. Excited to just talk about what the Lord wants me to talk about, right? I love having conversation. Um, Today, I will be in here solo for episode 1, but in the future, I do plan on having different guests, and we're gonna just talk about just a number of things. Um, all about Jesus, all about His Word, the Bible, His promises. Um, just the things that are in the Bible, from the way we're supposed to live to the weird things, the things about the supernatural and all that. I mean, I just want to get into anything and everything that has to do with the Word of God, and things that people don't talk about, people don't preach about. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to discuss. And you may be wondering why it's called the Heavenly Vision podcast. So in Acts, it says that Paul, that he said that he was not disobedient to the heavenly vision. He had a conversion on the road to Damascus, right? And go and read it. It's in Acts, and he had this encounter with Jesus, the one who he was persecuting. And then it says that he was not disobedient to the heavenly vision, meaning he had this encounter with Jesus and he was called to preach Jesus. He was called to preach to the Gentiles, to lead them to Christ, to let them know that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. He was there to convert them. And he was not disobedient to that. It said after he had his conversion, immediately he began to preach that Jesus was the Son of God and he was the way, the truth, and the life. So Paul wasn't disobedient to the heavenly vision, the call on his life. Neither should we be disobedient to that heavenly vision. Another reason I call it the heavenly vision is because we have to look at everything from heaven's perspective, everything from with the heavenly vision, a lens of faith. In Ephesians, the Bible, it says that we are seated in heavenly places with Christ. And whenever we're seated in heavenly places, that's the view that we have, is from heavenly places. We look at things from heaven's perspective, not earthly, not worldly, not natural, but with the supernatural eye, with the perspective of Jesus. Through the eyes of Jesus, we are called to look at people, to look at things and places, situations, problems, trials that we have. We have to put on our lens of faith to see that trials are there to develop us, just grow us, right? In general, we have to look at everything from heaven's perspective. And then the call and the gifts that we have, that's the heavenly vision. God gives us an idea. God gives us an inspiration. We have to act on that. We have to be obedient to it, right? So we have to have heavenly vision. And even as we're reading his word, we look at things through our natural minds, but we have to look at it. We have to be led by the Spirit and allow the Spirit to give us that heavenly perspective, that heavenly vision. This is the Heavenly Vision podcast. So, what we're going to get into today is I'm going to be reading out of Matthew. We're going to be talking about faith. Something simple. Episode 1 is going to be something simple. And I've been thinking about this for a few weeks now. Maybe even a month, I don't know, but it's been a little bit. Um, I was reading out of Matthew chapter 14. It's whenever Peter walks on water. When Jesus meets them on the water because of the storm and they're afraid. And like I said, I've been thinking about it for a few weeks now. And I just something really just caught my attention. And I want to talk about it because it makes you really look at your faith, and it makes you really look at like where you're at, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. like it makes you kind of question, like, did God really call me to do what I'm doing at the moment? Did God really call me to make that decision? You know, it makes you question that. And I think it's healthy that we ask ourselves that, because we have to be sure. We have to really be in tune with the Holy Spirit, be in tune with the Lord's voice, because we don't want to make dumb decisions. We don't want to be outside of God's will and be in our flesh and taking the steps that that our flesh, or stepping out of our flesh and our feelings. You know, being led by feelings instead of by his spirit. You know, but it really questions, like, do we really know God's voice? And if so, are we really walking by faith? Are we looking for a backup plan? Or do we already have a backup plan? We're going to walk by faith, but we have a backup plan. You know, like, do we really trust Jesus? And what are we focused on? So let's just get into it. Matthew chapter 14, starting in verse 22, I'm going to read to verse 33. And this is New King James Version. And you can read with whatever version that you prefer. But this is New King James, which is my favorite personally. So anyway, Matthew 14, starting at verse 22. It says, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a ghost. And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. So he said, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. So, if you have read the Bible, if you're a follower of Jesus, then I'm sure that you know this story, right? That you know that Jesus walked on water. We know of the miracle of Jesus walking on water. Even people who don't know Jesus, they know that Jesus walked on water, right? And Peter walked on water. He sank, but he walked on water. He did it, right? So, you know, reading this, I was thinking, like, you know, we hear it preached pretty often. We hear it preached that Jesus is calling you out of the boat. He's calling you out of the boat to take that step of faith, because he wants to do great things in your life. He wants to do great things in you and through you. He wants you to do great things, right? By his spirit. And this is like an illustration of, like, you know, like, we can do the impossible through Jesus, right? We can do the impossible. We can do great things that we aren't capable of on our own. We can do it with Christ, right? But the thing is that this actually happened. Like Peter literally walked on the water. Literally. I mean, we say that we believe the Bible, but do we actually believe that Peter walked on water? Like, Jesus is God. He can do whatever he wants. He created the water. He can definitely walk on the water. But Peter, being human, walked on water with Jesus, right? Yes, he sank, but he still walked on the water. So question, like, do you really believe that Peter walked on the water? Like, we don't see that today. I don't think I've heard of a story of a human being walking on water except for Peter walking to Jesus, right? So hold that thought because I want to jump into something else about this. Like I said, we hear it preached that Jesus is calling you out of the boat. He's calling you to take that step of faith, that impossible step of faith. He's calling you to take that step. But the thing is, and I agree with that. Like I've preached that myself, like not, to a congregation, but I've preached that myself to people, or to just, in my notes, I read that, I write what my thoughts are on this. But this time it just hit me different. And this is also speaking to me personally. It's speaking from personal experience, right? But Jesus didn't ask Peter to walk on water. Jesus didn't call Peter out of the boat. Peter called Jesus to call him out of the boat. Peter called himself, because it says, Jesus said that, "Be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid." And then verse 28, it says, "And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Peter asked to come on the water. Peter asked to walk on water. He says, "Lord, if it is you, command me." He told Jesus to command him. He called Jesus to call him out of the boat. Peter called first. Jesus said, "Don't be afraid." Jesus assured them that it was him, and it wasn't a ghost. It wasn't some evil spirit. It wasn't a demon, that it was Jesus, that it was him. And Peter called first and said, "Command me. If it is you, Lord, command me to walk on water." And then Jesus agreed, and he said, "Yes, come." Verse 29, so he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But then what happens, right? We hear it all the time. Jesus is calling you out of the boat. He's calling you to take that step of faith. And we take that step of faith, but you have to focus on Jesus and not the storm, and not what's happening around you, because you'll lose your focus and you begin to sink. But the thing is like, Jesus didn't call Peter. Peter called Jesus to call him. Peter asked to be called. Peter asked for this. But then whenever he noticed the wind, the waves, the storm, he began to sink, because he lost focus on Jesus. He lost the heavenly vision, right? He lost focus, and he began to sink. But what I'm saying is, like, Peter asked for this. So ask yourself, like, is there a situation that you're in right now? Maybe a burden that you're carrying. And when I say burden, I don't mean a bad burden. I mean something that's good, right? Like, say maybe God called you, or maybe you told God to call you to carry this burden, to carry this thing, to take this position, to do this work, right? Did Jesus really call you, or did you call Jesus to call you? And he said, "Yes, come." Like, because he was for you, right? He said, "Yes, come. I give you the ability and the grace to do it." But just know that you have to focus on me. Just know that you have to have that heavenly vision and that perspective of faith. And you have to walk by faith and not by sight, not by what you see, not by what you hear, not by the circumstances or this or that. Like, you have to focus on me, because if not, then you're going to sink. Because it says, "But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out saying, Lord, save me." It says, "And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And it was just making me think, like, we ask to walk on water and he gives us the ability to do so. But we allow fear and doubt to take our focus and we begin to sink. Then we call Jesus to rescue us. First we ask for the power, then we ask for saving, because we become afraid. We ask to be rescued from the thing we ask to be called to. We ask for this because Jesus asked, he says, "You of little faith." He asked him, "Why did you doubt?" See, I'm sure Peter could swim because he was a fisherman, right? But he didn't ask to swim. He asked to walk on water. He was a fisherman, right? Or at John 21 verse 7. Whenever excuse me, whenever Peter, when they see that it's Jesus on the shore, and John says, "It is the Lord." So Peter jumps in the water to go to the shore to Jesus. So that's kind of evident that he was able to swim. I mean, he was a fisherman, like I said. So he had to have the ability to swim. What's also interesting is that whenever Peter began to sink, his first instinct wasn't to swim. Jesus's first question wasn't, "Why didn't you swim? You were sinking. You know how to swim. Why didn't you try to swim?" His first Peter's first instinct was to call on Jesus. Jesus's first question was not, "Why didn't you swim?" It was, "Why did you doubt?" Doubt causes us to sink. Fear causes us to sink. And it's interesting. It's a good thing in this. Yes, Peter asked for this, right? He called to be called to walk on water, and then he began to sink. But he asked for this, right? But it does show something good. Because Jesus said, "Why did you doubt?" Right? Where is your faith? You lost your focus and your faith. But the thing is what Peter depended on changed. He didn't depend on his instinct changed. His dependence changed. He didn't depend on his ability to swim. He depended on Jesus's ability to save, to rescue him. The first thing he did was to call on Jesus. His first instinct wasn't to swim or try to doggy paddle. It was to call out to the one that he knew that could save him. Because the one who gave him the ability to walk on water was the one who had the ability to rescue him when he was sinking. We have to trust in God's ability to save than our ability to swim. And this what I'm getting to is God wants us to walk on water. We can look at that and we can read that and say, yeah, well, Peter asked for this. You're in this position because you asked for this. You asked to carry this burden. You asked to be put in this position. You asked to be in charge of this task. Yes, I did, because I trust in Jesus that he is able to keep me afloat. I trust in Jesus that he can give me the ability to do the impossible, to walk on water. Jesus gives us the ability to do great things. It says, now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us, according to his power in us. It's Christ in us, and it was so interesting, like, to see it from that perspective. Like, maybe someone has read this and thought the same thing. I don't know. But me personally, I never seen it from that perspective. Like, Peter really asked to be called to walk on the water. He asked for this, and it just shows so much in that little portion of what we read. And it's interesting. And it really, really makes me look, like, in my personal life, my personal walk, like, how many times have I said or thought that Jesus called me to do something, to move somewhere, to take this position, to take this job, to make this choice, but I was really calling Jesus to call me. But see, the thing is like, yes, the Lord will teach us a lesson, but it's not, to discipline us. He will allow us to do things, you know, but also, like, Peter wasn't shunned for, he wasn't like rebuked for being called, for calling Jesus to command him to walk on water. He was questioned of, why did you doubt? Because he graced him with the ability to walk on the water. We may make that decision and say, Lord, like, call me to do this, command me to do this. And he's like, yes, come. And you begin to do it and you sink and you make mistakes, and, but he's not going to question, like, Why did you want me? Why did you do that in the first place? He's going to question, like, why did you doubt? I graced you with the ability. I blessed your steps. I gave you the supernatural strength. I gave you the supernatural wisdom. I gave you the supernatural ability to do impossible things. I don't rebuke you for that. I don't rebuke you for thinking that you could do that through me. I rebuke you in a gentle way. I rebuke you because you doubt. I question you because you doubted and you lacked faith in me. You lost focus in me. So it's like we have to really check our faith. We have to really check our faith. Do we really believe? In Matthew chapter 13, the chapter right before that, at the very end, verse 58, it says, "Now he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief." Because of their unbelief. How important is our belief? How important is our faith? How important is our focus? The heavenly vision that we are supposed to have. The lens of faith that we are supposed to wear every day on every occasion, looking at every person, every situation, right? But we lose focus. We get distracted. We get afraid. So if you are in a position like that and you're saying, and you're questioning, like I've asked you to question, I've asked you to look at your heart. I asked you to look at your, where you're at right now and really examine yourself, examine your season, examine where you are right now, because it's important. It's healthy and we should. But like, did Jesus really call you, or did you call Jesus to call you? But at the same time, you may have thought you were ready, but you may feel like you're not. But like I said, at the same time, Jesus graced you with the ability. Your dependence should be on him and not on your ability. He graced you. He empowered you to do what he's called you to do. But he called you to depend on him and not yourself, not your own strength, not your own wisdom, not your own skill. Yes, he gave you that skill. He gave it to you. You have to put it into practice and work at it, exercise it. But at the end of the day, his purpose will go forth. His purpose will stand. It will never return back void. His word never returns back void. So ask yourself that, but give yourself some grace because he graced you with the ability. And if you're thinking of taking a step of faith, for me to start this little podcast, it took me a while because I was nervous. I was like, Lord, do you really want me to do this? And it's like, you never know until you try, right? Like sow the seed, sow the seed, so many seeds. You never know which one's going to prosper, which one's going to grow. God gives the increase. So I started this because, it took me a while to start this. And I was just questioning and I'm just, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to try. Lord, you will give me the ability. He said, don't focus on the views, focus on the vision. So that's what I'm doing. So if you're looking for your quote unquote sign, here it is. If you're looking for a word, here it is. Just do it. Focus on Jesus. Take that step because he's not teaching you to swim. Our parents could teach us that. He's teaching you to walk on water. But in order to walk on water, you have to have a heavenly vision. Hey, but it was fun. Y'all have a blessed one. Y'all have a blessed week. And I will be giving updates on, what the Lord wants to do, how I'm going to do this. I'm still trying to plan and prep. I'm still new to this. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I know that the Lord is going to provide the wisdom and everything that I need in order to do it. So y'all be praying for me. And I want to leave y'all with this a great quote by Matthew Henry. It says, though troubles and difficulties may disturb us in our duty, they must not drive us from it. But through the midst of them, we must press forward. Hey, y'all keep pressing forward. This is the Heavenly Vision Podcast.